Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Admiration, where we're going to carry on the theme from last week and look at another ad from the Euro 2024 Championship, this time for Paddy Power. So last week we worked with Richard Shotton, for those of you who've seen it, and if you haven't, feel free to have a look at the back catalogue. We looked at the Iron Brew ad, Manshaft, which was highly entertaining and amusing. Friday night was slightly less entertaining and amusing as a Scottish person, but at least we carried on singing despite a rather big loss. And this week we're looking at Paddy Power, which obviously has a much bigger focus on England and their football team than on Scotland. So with that, should we take a quick look at the ad, Isa?
Yeah, let's do it.
The Euros are here, and let's have it right. England are everyone's favourites.
Favourites? Oh, yeah. England are my favourites because they're so humble about past accomplishments. They weren't even born.
England are my favourites because of how they blend into new cultures.
Right, treacle, egg and chips, por favor, please.
They are my favorite because of their effortless style. Mamma mia.
Aye, for me, they're my favourite because of their world-renowned wit.
What can I get you? Football team?
They have to be my favorites for the way they make such gracious exits.
Jog on. We're not that bad, are we?
It's coming home! I really hope it doesn't.
This Euros, Europe's favourites are favourites. Paddy Power.
I'm proper bricking it right now.
I'm having a little chuckle over here. I don't know about you, Isa.
Yeah, I mean, it really doesn't get old. Every time I see it, I find something different funny. This time it was just the sheer fact that they need subtitles to actually make sense of what Danny Dyer is saying, which I can relate to. So.
I also just like it when he goes please and then just goes por favor, as if that suddenly makes him fit in, like the small moments like that. And of course, as a Scottish person, I can relate massively to that end team. By the way, I don't mind if England win, I should say. I would love a home nation to win, but there's also the joke that there'd be nothing worse than the gloating that would be around you. Shall we jump into the results and see what most people think?
Yeah. So as usual, we've got our overall diagnosis of what's feeding into the ads sales impact score and the brand impact score, which are quite high, both sitting in the top third of all ads that we've looked at in the UK. But particularly that sales impact is quite high there, sitting in the top 15% of all ads.
Nice. And you can see ad distinctiveness and brand distinctiveness looking particularly high there. And obviously that's critically important because it's a cluttered time of year, right, for all ads to try and tap into that momentum around the Euros. But I guess betting ads particularly really need to win in those particular moments. So they're important to see. Maybe we can have a little dive into overall emotion in a moment. And I guess the other one, just to reference, which we'll not go into much further, but the brand recall is probably the one area where it looks like it's struggling a little bit. And we do know that ads that tap into cultural moments do have to work that little bit harder to make sure that not only do they tap into it in a relevant way, but in a way and execute in a way that actually can be owned by the brand. So perhaps we'll come back and look at that, but dive more immediately into emotion.
Yeah, definitely. Perhaps we start by looking at the emotions that were felt at a more overall level, and then we can go into the second by second view.
Perfect.
From an overall emotion perspective, a really emotionally engaging ad, particularly on the humor side. It really made people laugh significantly above the norm, but there was also quite a lot of love felt for the ad, and it definitely comes out towards the end when people maybe reflect on just how funny and lovable and relatable it is. They actually love how the English people are portrayed in a very light-hearted and non-offensive manner, which just adds to the ad overall.
Yeah, I think that's super clever. I mean, just about everyone's feeling something and just about all positive, which is incredible. Do you know what it reminds me of? Do you remember we talked in the Weetabix ad a number of weeks ago about the importance of getting the little mini stories within the story right when they were talking about, you know, the cultural references around potholes and around all of those things. It feels like here as well, it's not just the overall insight that the ad's based on, right? But it's all of those individual moments where they've had to perfectly, you know, relate to particular things, like how British people might blend in or not blend in abroad, but in a really funny way, how Scottish people might feel related to the England team, the kind of the humbleness or not so much of reflecting on victories of the past and all of those things. It's like they must have done a lot of work to make sure that they got those moments spot on.
Yeah, definitely.
They could have been offensive or they might not have been. So should we have a little look moment by moment how people do react to them, and if all of those moments are funny or have any missed the mark?
You can see really clearly that they all kind of create a peak of humor to some extent. Obviously, some are a bit more effective than others, but you can see that laughter peaking constantly throughout the ad, very consistently as well. There's only like, I mean, you only see like moments where it dips and it's that in between of like one joke to the next. So it keeps people really engaged throughout. And where you see the emotional intensity under the norm is because of the length of the ad, and that's absolutely expected. So whilst that looks negative, it's actually not so much, given the overall emotion that the ad delivers, and given like the attention retention that it keeps from the audience throughout through the laughter that it manages to kind of induce at the different moments.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of peaks there. And often when we look at an ad of this length, it's fairly obvious where it could be cut back. Now, obviously, as a reminder, they could easily cut this down to 30 seconds and play off the kind of, you know, reminder of the whole video ad. But equally, it's definitely not wasted space that they have, because each joke that they're doing is adding to that journey and adding to that laughter and overall like that you referenced. Well, in fact, love that you referenced earlier in the video.
Yeah.
So clearly the storyline's resonating. They've kind of tapped into an insight around, I guess, England being the favourites, and actually how they feel about that and how England's seen in society and all of those things. And actually, I would say they've tapped into more than an insight. They've like created a kind of feeling around that moment, and really tapped into the idea of the kind of passion and optimism that everyone wants to feel around a tournament, which is a really great thing to do. Is there anything else that's driving the love from the ad?
I think you've articulated it quite well. I think the only other thing is Danny Dyer himself and how he adds to that experience. I mean, he is pretty much the embodiment of that kind of annoying English person. Some people love him, some people hate him, and how he talks and how he behaves is almost like the representation of the type of football fan that Paddy Power is trying to convey here. So that the use of him in the ad actually adds to that level of relatability, and it adds to the message that they're trying to deliver as well.
And that's very clever, right? Because we often say sometimes like a celebrity's just kind of slammed on the ad to kind of grab attention, but actually a choiceful use of a celebrity, like a choiceful use of music, it's something that actually adds much more to the story and to the emotions, to the feelings that people have, rather than just being there purely because they're famous. It's what they're famous for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the celebrity appeal score for him was through the roof. The ad scored 4.1 on celebrity appeal versus a norm of something like 3.4, significantly ahead of the average that we see for ads in the UK. And in the likes, he comes through quite a lot as well, like specific mentions about him, and maybe we can look at what the likes are saying now. And if we type in Danny Dyer's name to search for the likes that mention him, there's quite a few that come up. So if we get Danny in there, You see all the stuff that is coming in, particularly on how entertaining the ad is. Had Danny Dyer in it, which was funny and hilarious, and it made me laugh and made me want to keep watching to see what was going to happen. I think he adds to the gripping of people's attentions from the very beginning of the ad, and he keeps people hooked throughout as well. Even people who don't necessarily like him found him funny in this ad. This person said, "I'm not a fan of Danny Dyer normally, but he was quite funny and actually made for an entertaining ad," which is exactly, I think, what they were trying to do with him here. But if we
That's a nice tone as well, there is a look. Like it made fun and jest about England, but it was all good fun. There's another reference to them getting it tonally spot on where it could have gone horribly wrong, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there were so many great comments about how they got it right in terms of how they phrased everything and how like it just wasn't offensive in the slightest. So if we go back to kind of the overall likes, this first one in particular is quite a good one. I appreciate the Paddy Power advert for England in the Euros for its clever and relatable humour. It brilliantly captures the roller coaster of emotions that English football fans experience during international tournaments. And they talk about how the narrative, the arc, the star of the ad are just great. So yeah, I think there's quite a few people that mention that sort of stuff, which just
And I think on reflection as well, if we take this one and the Iron Brew one for last week, what they have done exceptionally, which the other Euros ads or many of the other Euros ads haven't necessarily done, is capture the emotions and the excitement and the anticipation of the Euros in a really authentic way for the nations that are involved. So yeah, superbly done by both of them.
yeah.
Anything else you want to show us in platform before we zoom out a little bit?
I don't think so. I think this is kind of the bulk of what was great about the ad.
Okay, excellent. In which case, should we just take a little zoom out? Because there was one observation that we did want to share from a more macro level, having celebrated, I guess, how fantastic the Paddy Power ad, how successful the Iron Brew ad was, how they've really done a great job of tapping into an insight and great storytelling and engaging and tapping into that kind of passion and momentum of the moment that really matters. But the one watch out, I guess, is, you know, obviously brands should be advertising around this time of year and they should advertise in a way that's relevant. The one watch out to really think about during ad development is just how you're going to make sure that your brand takes credit for that. Because one thing that a lot of the ads have struggled with this year, but we've also seen during the Super Bowl and we've seen at other cultural moments, is how they tap into the moment. They tap into it in an authentic way for the brand, which I think most of these have done, but you have to go beyond being authentic to being able to execute in a way that you can't miss the brand. And I think even if we reflect on the Iron Brew one from last week, it was absolutely brilliant. And amongst people who were super close to Iron Brew and understood all of the cues and spotted Iron Brew in the Stein and spotted his boxer shorts at the end and the colours, you know, they got the brand. But for people who were less close to the brand, they couldn't necessarily realise that it was for Iron Brew. And this Paddy Power ad, which is absolutely fantastic. The one area where they could have got an even better return is if people had been more readily able to immediately see that it was a Paddy Power ad. And we've just got another couple of examples here, right? One from Sky Bet and one from Coca-Cola. And again, just like other examples where the ability to connect to the brand is kind of average or a little bit below average rather than excelling like we've seen with other ads outside of this particular football tournament.
Yeah, I think it's all about making that ad undeniably for your brand, where there's no question that there's no question between the link of your brand to the event that you're trying to advertise for, and that no other brand within the category or at a wider level could have owned the same type of messaging execution that you've chosen to go for.
And that's where distinctive assets play a great role, right? Because the more assets that you build up all year round that are truly owned, of course, distinctive brand assets for your brand, the easier it is to be able to let your creativity flourish in the storytelling that you tell related to these events while still being 100% for that brand. And you can see Iron Brew have tried that really well with the colours of the kilt, the Stein, you know, all of those things, but people needed to recognise those assets, which is great in Scotland and perhaps not so much beyond. And if we look at the Paddy Power one, you know, they've used some of the green and different things, but if they'd had even more assets to use, it probably would have helped throughout the story. And if we look at the Sky Bet one, the branding really comes in, as I would say, after the ad has ended. What I mean by that is it had the kind of more engaging piece of the story that came first, and then the promotional piece that came at the end, and the brand only really got a role in the promotional bit, by which time people may have, the story may have ended for people and they've moved on. So not a negative thing, but just a really nice reminder that the opportunity that's offered by tapping into those cultural moments may not be maximized if you can't find a way to at least execute in a way that's more like very obviously for your brand when it's a very cluttered time of year. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Isa. It's been good fun looking at the ads related to the Euros. I guess hopefully we'll have some for the Olympics coming up, right? That's not so far off.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.